The morning mist hung thick between the towering pines as Jake made his routine patrol along Whitewater Creek. The air carried that crisp bite of approaching winter, and his breath formed small clouds as he walked the familiar trail. He'd been following the creek for about an hour when an unusual sound stopped him dead in his tracks, a low, mournful whimpering that seemed to echo off the water. Following the sound through a tangle of undergrowth, Jake discovered a sight that made his heart sink. There, trapped in what locals called a mud devil, one of those deceptively deep sinkholes that formed after heavy rains, was a young black bear, probably no more than 2 years old. The animal's glossy fur was caked with thick, clay-like mud, and its dark eyes held a look of exhausted desperation that Jake had seen too many times in his career. The bear had clearly been struggling for hours, maybe even since the previous night. Its efforts to escape had only driven it deeper into the viscous trap, and now it barely had the strength to keep its head above the murky surface. Jake knew he had minutes, not hours, before the young bear would succumb to exhaustion and hypothermia. Without hesitation, Jake radioed his position to headquarters, though he knew help wouldn't arrive for hours in this remote location. He couldn't wait. Moving slowly and speaking in the calm, steady voice he'd perfected over years of wildlife encounters, Jake began his descent into the mud hole. The rescue was grueling. For nearly 45 minutes, Jake worked to free the terrified animal, fighting against suction that seemed determined to claim both of them. The bear, delirious with fear and exhaustion, initially fought his efforts, but gradually seemed to understand that this strange human was trying to help. When Jake finally managed to lift the mud-covered animal to solid ground, both of them collapsed, gasping and shivering. Jake quickly wrapped the bear in his emergency blanket and began the careful process of cleaning mud from its airways and checking for injuries. Miraculously, aside from exhaustion and mild hypothermia, the young bear appeared unharmed. Jake offered it small sips of water from his canteen, and gradually, the animal's breathing steadied. Rather than wait for a wildlife transport team that might not arrive until the next day, Jake made a decision that went against protocol but felt absolutely right. He set up his emergency bivouac nearby and spent the night watching over the recovering bear, maintaining a respectful distance but staying close enough to help if needed. As dawn broke through the forest canopy, the bear struggled to its feet. It looked directly at Jake for a long moment, then did something that gave the veteran ranger chills. It walked over and gently pressed its snout against his knee before turning and disappearing into the forest. From that day forward, Jake always carried a few apples in his pack during his patrols. He told himself it was just coincidence when, 3 weeks later, he encountered the same bear again near Whitewater Creek. The animal looked healthy and strong, its fur now clean and lustrous. When it saw Jake, it didn't flee, but sat quietly, as if waiting. Jake rolled an apple across the ground, and the bear delicately picked it up, taking careful bites while maintaining eye contact. This became their routine. Every few weeks during his patrols, Jake would encounter the bear, always in remote locations far from hiking trails. The animal would appear silently, accept its apple, and then melt back into the forest. Jake never tried to approach or touch the bear again. This wasn't about domestication, but about mutual respect and remembrance. 8 months later, Jake received an assignment that filled him with both excitement and apprehension. The Canadian Parks Service needed someone to conduct a biodiversity survey in the most remote section of the reserve, an area so wild and untouched that it appeared on maps simply as uncharted wilderness. It would be a solo mission lasting several days, requiring Jake to venture deeper into the backcountry than he'd ever gone before. On the third day of his survey, everything went wrong. A sudden spring storm brought torrential rain and winds that turned the forest into a maze of fallen trees and rushing water. Jake was forced to make emergency camp in a small clearing. But as night fell, he realized he wasn't alone. The silence was unnatural. No bird calls, no insect sounds, just an oppressive quiet that every experienced outdoorsman learns to fear. Then Jake caught the scent on the wind and saw the gleaming eyes reflecting his flashlight beam. Wolves. A large pack, and they'd found an isolated human in their territory. Jake counted at least 6 pairs of eyes circling his camp. These weren't the half-starved, desperate wolves of fairy tales. These were apex predators in their prime, intelligent and patient. They moved with the coordinated precision of a military unit, cutting off every escape route while slowly tightening their circle. Jake grabbed his survival knife and a half-burned piece of firewood, knowing how inadequate these defenses were against a coordinated pack attack. His emergency beacon was useless. Even if rescuers got the signal, they couldn't reach him for hours. The lead wolf, a massive gray male with scars across his muzzle, began the low growl that would signal the attack. Just as the first wolf lunged forward, a sound erupted from the forest that froze every creature in the clearing. A roar so powerful and primal that Jake felt it in his chest. From the darkness emerged a sight that seemed impossible. A fully grown black bear, easily 400 pounds of muscle and fury, charging directly into the circle of wolves. It was his bear. Older, larger, but unmistakable. The same intelligent dark eyes, the same distinctive white patch on its chest that Jake had cleaned mud from all those months ago. What followed was a display of raw courage that brought tears to Jake's eyes. The bear didn't just drive off the wolves, it positioned itself between them and Jake, like a living shield, roaring challenges that echoed through the forest. When the pack leader tried to circle around, the bear met it head-on, delivering a blow that sent the wolf tumbling. The message was clear. This human was under protection. The wolves, faced with an opponent they hadn't expected and couldn't intimidate, melted back into the forest. The bear stood guard until their scents had completely faded, then turned to Jake. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the smoky campfire. Then the bear approached, gently touching Jake's hand with its nose as it had that first morning after the rescue. Jake reached into his pack with trembling hands and pulled out an apple. The bear accepted it solemnly, took a single bite, then looked directly into Jake's eyes as if to say, "We're even now." As the first light of dawn began to filter through the trees, the bear turned and walked away, disappearing once again into the wilderness that was its home. Jake never saw the bear again during his remaining years as a ranger, but he never stopped carrying apples. He shared the story with every new recruit who joined the service, though most were skeptical until they'd spent enough time in the wilderness to understand that nature operates by rules far more complex and mysterious than any textbook could explain. In a world where acts of kindness often go unnoticed and unrewarded, Jake's story stands as a testament to something beautiful and eternal. That compassion, no matter how small, creates ripples that can return to us when we need them most. The bear never forgot the human who saved its life, and when the time came, it repaid that debt with interest. Sometimes justice isn't served in courtrooms or through human institutions. Sometimes it comes on 4 paws, with a roar that echoes through the forest, reminding us that the bonds we forge through kindness are stronger than any law and more enduring than any human creation. If this story moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories of the connections between humans and the natural world.